Number 1. Star Wars was released in the same year as the last execution by guillotine in France. When we think of executions by guillotine, our minds often wander to historical figures like Napoleon, but you don't have to go that far back in history. Star Wars premiered in the United States on May 20th, 1977. While this futuristic sci-fi adventure captivated audiences around the world, at the same time, Hamida Jandubi, the so-called pimp murderer, was beheaded for the torture and murder of a young woman. That was the last use of the guillotine in France. Since then, no one has been executed there in any way. Considering the timing, even your own grandfather could have witnessed this last execution, and maybe while watching, he chatted with some strangers about the new cool Star Wars movie. Number 2. The same turtle belonged to both Charles Darwin and Steve Irwin. Harriet the turtle was reportedly collected by Charles Darwin during his journey to the Galapagos Islands in 1835 as part of a worldwide research expedition. She was then brought to England and eventually transferred to her final home in Australia by a retired captain of the Beagle, the very ship Darwin used on his expedition. And, as we all know, turtles can live for quite a long time. By a strange coincidence, Harriet eventually ended up in Steve Irwin's zoo. That's right, the pet turtle of Charles Darwin was adopted by the legendary crocodile hunter. However, there are some doubts about the story, as Darwin is said to have never visited the island Harriet originally came from. Number 3. The world's oldest living tree was already 1,000 years old when the last woolly mammoth died. The oldest tree in the world is a Great Basin bristlecone pine in the White Mountains of California, estimated to be around 5,000 years old. To put that into perspective, the last isolated populations of woolly mammoths on Wrangel Island only went extinct about 4,000 years ago. This small island in the Arctic Ocean served as a refuge for the giant animals after they had been displaced from the mainland by humans and climate change. That means you wouldn't even have to travel back to the Ice Age to meet a few mammoth friends. Number 4. Woolly mammoths and the Egyptians. As I have already explained before, woolly mammoths went extinct about 4,000 years ago, at a time when human civilizations already existed. The oldest of the Great Pyramids in Egypt, the Pyramid of Djoser, was built about 1,000 years before the mammoths went extinct. This means that people were in the process of creating some of the most impressive structures in human history, while on a few remote islands, mammoths were still casually going about their business. Number 5. Mahatma Gandhi and Jack the Ripper. Gandhi is so closely linked to the gigantic events of the 20th century that it may seem strange to imagine him as an elegant gentleman in Victorian London, but that is exactly what he was, at least for a while studying law there. He arrived in London in September 1888, right in the middle of the infamous Jack the Ripper murders. Of course, Gandhi had absolutely nothing to do with the murders, but it's somehow amusing to imagine that theoretically, Gandhi could have been considered a suspect in one of the most famous criminal cases of all time. Number 6. Nintendo and Jack the Ripper. Even though Jack the Ripper and Nintendo existed around the same time, the infamous serial killer unfortunately never had the chance to play classics like Zelda and Mario. When Nintendo was founded in 1889, the company originally produced playing cards called Hanafuda. At that exact time, Jack the Ripper was spreading fear and terror on the streets of London. His murder spree took place only about a year before Nintendo was brought to life. Number 7. Prisoners arrived in Auschwitz just a few days after McDonald's was founded. While McDonald's is traditionally associated with the good times and prosperity of 1950s America, the very first restaurant was actually opened much earlier, on May 15, 1940. At the same time, one of the most gruesome chapters in human history was beginning in Europe. Just 5 days after McDonald's grand opening, the first prisoners arrived at the Auschwitz concentration camp, which is located in present-day Poland. Number 8. The University of Oxford existed for hundreds of years before the Aztec Empire was founded. The Aztec Empire began as an alliance of 3 city-states. These 3 city-states controlled the area in and around the Valley of Mexico from 1428 onward. The empire met its end when the combined forces of the Spanish conquistadors and their indigenous allies under Hernán Cortés defeated them in 1521. Aztec culture was characterized by rich and complex mythological and religious traditions and produced remarkable architectural and artistic achievements. Meanwhile, The University of Oxford in England had already been well established for a long time. Its exact founding date is unknown, but there is evidence of teaching activities dating back to the 11th century. It grew significantly from 1167 onward, when Henry II banned English students from studying at the University of Paris. Part of Oxford's present-day fame, therefore, can be attributed to the fact that Henry pulled off a rather clever marketing trick. Number 9. Ecstasy was invented in the same year the Titanic sank. The Titanic, considered unsinkable, sank in 1912 in the North Atlantic 4 days after the start of its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City. That same year, the pharmaceutical company, Merck, was interested in developing substances to stop abnormal bleeding. One of their chemists, Anton Kullisch, synthesized MDMA to bypass a patent held by the German rival buyer. However, it took until 1975 for the psychoactive effects of the substance to be seriously studied, after which its recreational use spread through personal networks of psychotherapists, psychiatrists, psychedelic drug users, and yuppies. And yes, that means that everyone who died on the Titanic never had the chance to try this drug. By the way, ecstasy increases body temperature. If the drug had existed earlier, that might explain why the captain was so desperate to crash into an iceberg. Number 10. The first fax machine was invented during the time of the cowboys. Picture this. It's the Wild West. Cowboys are riding their horses and occasionally engaging in old-fashioned shootouts. And now, imagine that fax machines already existed during this time. By the late 1860s, the fax technology developed by Alexander Bain had already been known for over 20 years. Theoretically, a sheriff could have received a faxed wanted poster instead of waiting for some guy on a horse to bring it by. Number 11. Microsoft was founded while Spain was still a fascist dictatorship. Franco was a highly controversial figure in both the Spain of that time and today. His supporters praised his strongly anti-communist and nationalist stance, the preservation of traditional Spanish customs, and his support for the Spanish monarchy. Critics, on the other hand, condemned him as an autocratic dictator who violently suppressed opposition and dissenters, banned any culture that was not considered Spanish, and provided significant support to the Nazis during World War II. Franco ruled Spain as a fascist state until his death in 1975. And in that very year, Microsoft was founded by Paul Allen and Bill Gates, marking the beginning of a new era in computer technology. Number 12. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows was published in the same year the first iPhone was released. The seventh and final book in the Harry Potter series was published in 2007, bringing an end to the series that had begun in 1997 with Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. In the same year, something hit the market that likely did more to destroy children's interest in reading than anything else: the first iPhone model. Considering that the first iPhone looks like an ancient mobile phone today, it's impressive how quickly time passes. Thanks for watching. See the video on your screen? Well, YouTube thinks this one might interest you as well, so go ahead and check it out if you like.